There are so many interesting facts about our building today, the La Jolla Women's Club, and the architect, Irving J. Gill, and especially the woman who commissioned this building, Ellen Browning Scripps. I frankly am not sure where to begin. Maybe we'll start ladies first. Ellen Browning Scripps was born in London in 1836 and raised in Illinois. She loved reading and learning at a time in history when it was generally believed that women would overtax their mind and cause themselves to become ill if they did too much mental work. So much for that nonsense. She and her brother, E.W. Scripps, created what would become America's largest chain of newspapers, linking Midwestern industrial cities with booming towns in the West. When she was in her early 60s, Ellen traveled to the West Coast in 1890 and eventually settled in La Jolla. Ellen began a new life as a philanthropist, donating significant amounts to fund organizations and buildings. She disliked the word philanthropist and referred to her gifts as investments. Her obituary described her as a woman who had perfected the art of living as well as the art of giving. Irving John Gill, known as Jack, was born near Syracuse in New York in 1870. He started his architectural career in Chicago, but came to Southern California in his early 20s. Little did he know then that he would radically redefine the American architectural landscape with his forward-looking aesthetic. When he came to California, he was inspired by the natural landscape and wrote in an article for Craftsman magazine, "We have great wide plains arched by blue skies that are fresh chapters as yet unwritten." What he's seeing was this lovely region with little or no development that offered an unparalleled opportunity to start over with the new architecture. He writes, "If we, the architects of the West, wish to do great and lasting work, we must dare to be simple. We must have the courage to boldly throw aside every accepted structural belief and standard of beauty and get back to the source of all architectural strength, the straight line, the arch, the cube, and the circle. The straight line is borrowed from the horizon as a symbol of greatness, grandeur, and nobility. The arch is patterned from the dome of the sky and represents exaltation, reverence, aspiration. The circle is the sign of completeness, motion, and progression, as may be seen when a stone touches water. The square is a symbol of power, justice, honesty, and firmness. These are the bases, the units of architectural language, and without them there can be no direct or inspired architectural speech. We must not weaken our message of beauty and strength by the stuttering mumble of useless ornaments." And there we have it. The La Jolla Women's Club is one of his most notable buildings, and it reflects the architect's trademark aesthetic. Commissioned by Ellen Browning Scripps in 1913, she donated the land and $40,000. The La Jolla Women's Club building exemplifies Gill's modern style in its simplified geometry, repetitive arches, and minimal ornamentation. Although more expensive than traditional framing techniques, Gill used his experimental concrete tilt wall construction method to pour and erect the exterior walls in single units, resulting in a technologically advanced and formally straightforward concrete structure. On the interior, the architect, who was obsessed with hygiene, took the undecorated planes of the facade even further, eliminating moldings, baseboards, and paneling to prevent the collection of dust. It's a building far ahead of its time, with its simple elegance predating the modern aesthetic that would define California architecture in the coming decades. The partnership between Ellen Browning Scripps and Irving Gill remains one of the most important client-architect relationships in American history. Sharing a desire to produce progressive and permanent architecture in Southern California, the pair worked together on a number of significant works, including the George H. Scripps Laboratory, the Bishop School, the La Jolla Rec Center, and Scripps' own home, South Moulton Villa 2. The architect designed many buildings and public institutions that contributed to La Jolla's reputation as a progressive and a harmonious place to live. Scripps recognized that Gill built costly structures, explaining concrete buildings are always expensive, even with the greatest simplicity. But she trusted Gill as a scrupulously careful, highly intelligent architect who took a personal interest in the matters of the highest kind, even if he rarely stayed within his initial estimates. Gill's posthumous reputation as one of the great modernist architects can be explained in part by the survival of the La Jolla structures commissioned by Scripps. Her faith in his talent and her willingness to invest in the future preserved his work for generations to come. But conversely, her life has a physical manifestation because of his works. If they had been done by a lesser architect, they could have been torn down, and we wouldn't know as much about her as we do. As we get ready to draw our sketch, let's first take a look at our subject matter and kind of get our bearings. It's a very rectangular building, has a regular pattern of those cool arches. I'm going to do a little overlay. That might make it helpful just to give us an idea where we're going. It's sort of a rectangular building, so in the middle of our drawing, that's going to be our drawing. In the middle is a horizontal band, another horizontal band, which is shrubbery. A fun little triangle up at the top. Regular arches. There's going to be some shading in the arches to give us an idea of some depth. There'll be a little tree off to the side. See what I mean about simple? And we break it down into simple forms. It helps keep us on track. Now, something I'd like us to think about doing today, taking a page out of our sketchbook, or if you're using a loose piece of paper, fold it in half. You notice that if you've got a sketchbook that's got a spiral binding on it, if you're left-handed, keep your spiral binding on the right-hand side so that you're not drawing over it. If you're right-handed, do it the other way. All right, it'll be a smaller sketch. I'd like to start with pencil and just lightly figure out where I'm going with this sketch. I feel like the rectangle in our sketch is going to be sort of important today. So I'm just going to block out a rectangle that's about the right proportions. It's almost like a golden rectangle, or the golden ratio. That's an old formula where that's thought to be aesthetically pleasing. That's where the short side of your rectangle is about, that's where the long side of your rectangle is equal to the short side of your rectangle times 1.6. So the width of your rectangle is taking the height of your rectangle and adding a little more than half the width to it. Let's just say, whatever the height of your rectangle, see if you can't make it about the width 1.5 times. Didn't mean to get off on a mathematical formula so early in our sketch. We're here to have fun, and some people are intimidated by math. All right, so if we could, oops, I'm going to talk math again, and on the side, break it into 3 visually equal parts. Don't have to be exact. That top line is going to be that roof line of that, or the top of the parapet line, the top of that wall there. This bottom line That's going to be about the line of all these hedges. All right, from here, let's find the middle, eyeball it, if you would please. That's this line. And if you're not right on center, so much the better, because our sketch isn't perfectly on center either. And sometimes taking it a little off center lets the viewer know, just kind of puts them on notice. Don't be looking for perfect symmetry here, because we're drawing this by hand and it's not really a perfect thing. I'd say the next thing we do, now that we've broken it up like this, I'm going to make a little line just above that lower one. And then, what I'm trying to do is to make another line that is going to be the top of our arches. So it's a little more than half. Draw that line there. Now we'll do a series of these arched openings. Now, how about the width of them? I'd say draw your first one. Make a little vertical mark on either side of it. Can you make another little round arch beside it? Another one beside it. And hopefully you've got just a little left over. Did it work out all right? So on going the other direction, and we're eyeballing them, and that's what gives your sketches character. If you've got some mistakes in there, so much the better. That's just a fun little quirky thing that'll be about your sketch. How's that? Now let's draw a line up between these two columns. So you've got a half one, a whole one, in between that one. Draw a little tick mark. Find the same spacing on the opposite side, so it would be this little tick mark. And draw a little line like that. Okay, that's this little section of wall that we can see above these three arches. See it peeking above that parapet wall? There's a taller roof section in this building. All right. The edge of the roof itself looks like it goes almost all the way to the midway of this first full arch. So there's that. And let's assume that building looks symmetrical. Let's assume the same thing is happening over here, though we can't see it. And come up a little bit. You're going to have a diagonal line. That roof's got a little slope to it. I'd say this is a great time to eyeball it. I've used that expression a number of times in this sketch. If you want to try to be a little more precise, you could figure out with your pencil what that angle is. I think this is another one of those cases of just draw what you see, and that'll be your interpretation. I'll put in a skinny little chimney there. It's got a little width on it, not much. There's another chimney above this arch. Looks like that left side of the chimney is a little bit left of the center of that arch. So find the center, go over a little. There's your chimney. All right. Now how about we get into some of the plants in the foreground, this band. So here's an interesting thing about Irving Gill that I've noticed is he used a very similar, if not the same, formula for these arched openings on so many of his buildings. So it's got a round top, arched opening, it's got a square bottom. If you were to complete the circle on this window opening, you would find the circle fits in there. So what he did is he took a circle and he just squared off the bottom. So to confirm that you've got your proportions right, see if that circle fits in all of these. And then square off the bottom. Now it doesn't hold true for the door, though if you can see in there, it sort of holds true for the door until we get to the kick plate. So the door itself is a little longer, a little taller of an arched opening. And then we have some steps below it. I'm going to make a little band below my door. There's a little plinth to the left. Start to see a little one on the right. We'll give it a hint. All right, how about if we come down? Next thing we see are the gates. So there's a tendency when you sketch to draw these areas too tall. They're quite foreshortened. You might even argue that I might have the steps a little too tall. But so let's just make another line right here, kind of close by. Not too far down, not too close to the edge of the sheet. We're going to give a hint to this gate. It's a little rectangle with a curved top. It's inviting, isn't it? Those little gates being open say to the visitor, come in, come this way. All right, just gonna draw a rectangle like that. That's the hedge. Do another one over here. It's as simple as that. That's the hedge. If you stop and take a look at your drawing, we're nearly finished. All right, here are these fun bushes, shrubs, what would we call them? Plants that look like a whole series of little starbursts. For now, let's just find the blob. They're in front of this column between these two arched openings. Go ahead and make your blob. It's a little off center. There's a little lollipop blob there. Got another one on this other side. Lightly like that. What else do we want to do in pencil while we're here? It's a little bit of sidewalk coming out at us. You can see a little angle here. It's the edge of the grass, both in the courtyard area here and then out on the street. You just notice that there's a little, I think they call it a parkway, a little strip of lawn right here. There's the sidewalk and a little strip of lawn right there. Look at our sketch and see if there's anything we forgot to draw in. I'm thinking, oh, I forgot to draw in these little doors. I'll just give a hint at it there. There is a rectangular, an archtop door, a very cool archtop door in here. I thought we might wait until we gotten a few of our ink lines in, just because you get too many of these pencil lines in and they start to get confusing, especially when everything is light. All right. I like to start inking. I'm using my favorite Precise V5 rolling ball extra fine pen. A thinner pen on a small sketch is useful. To use a fat pen on a smaller sketch will really give it some fun character, and you'll be done in no time. I'm going to follow the steps I took when I was doing the drawing in pencil. I started with that top. Rather than starting with the bottom, remember we did another horizontal line, I might just go straight for those arches. I don't always use a continuous line, as you might have seen right there. Sometimes I break them up. Especially I'll break up this area here where there's so much light hitting it, you hardly even see that line. Might not even draw that one all the way. And where you have plant material in front, go ahead and not draw any line for now. We have that blobby starburst plant there. This is also a fine time if you didn't like your pencil drawing, or if there's a pencil line that you want to scoot it over. When you're inking in, just go ahead and put it where you want it to be. All right. Now let's do the edge of that roof. There's a little thickness to it, and if you notice over here where the sun is hitting it, we can see some rafter tails. Those are the roof rafters that extend that support for the roof. So if you wanted to, you could give a little hint. We don't see them so much on this side. Up to you. All right, how about let's draw on that roof. There's a little angle to it. I didn't pick it up in pencil. And how about the chimney? As we know, this building was built in 1914. But they did have two little fireplaces. It's a public building. It was a gathering place. So the fireplaces were they were not in the main meeting area. They were off in two little sitting rooms. Really sweet looking space, and the fireplaces are very charming. I doubt the fireplaces would have been used to heat up that whole the whole meeting area, but it certainly made for a nice little intimate gathering space. All right. Now, before we get much further, stop and decide what should we do next. Should we start to block out the planting down here? We've been starting with lines and forms, shapes, starting to add a little more detail as we go, but we're still working on lines and shapes. So let's get our shapes here for this, the shrubbery in the front. It's a vine that's covering a low wall, so it's almost like a box. Plant material, not going to, I mean, it's nice that this plant has got a straight edge to it, but we're not going to draw it as a straight edge. We'll just draw it as a series of sort of squiggles. At any time you want to do your borders, go ahead. I'm going to do the sides. I'm going to leave the bottom for the time being. Let me go ahead and draw the top. Let's do the other side. Series of squiggles, like a rectangle. over on this side. Now look behind it, there's a slightly taller rectangle that's behind the gate. And it goes up just to the underside of the window opening. How about these crazy guys? So what is there to draw? What we can do is start to do a hint of some of the starbursts. We don't want to draw all of them, especially because this is in sun, like full sun. Even this one is mostly in the sun. And so what we're catching are some of the shadows. Let's just do a couple of the starbursts, get us going. Maybe around the edges, just draw some little curved lines like that. Same thing with this guy over here. So I'm working this sort of center band. I'm looking at the shrubs, I'm coloring them in, finding the shadow side, maybe giving a few more lines to the shadow side. And I'm just, I guess I'm working it. I'm not, you can see that I'm hopping from one object to the other to complete everything. I'm going to draw in the gates now. I'm going to do the outside of the gate first. I can see that I've drawn this gate a little too big. Oh well. So what I can do is it's still higher than where it looks like I'm about to put the bottom of the wall. So here's the bottom of the wall. And actually I didn't do so badly after all. There's the branches of this shrub. It's interesting because it looks like a giant shrub. It's actually a couple of them. You can see the branches coming out of the ground here, another one here. It's more like a climber or a vine, really. This shrub, it's not a bush. If it is a bush, it's what they call a spaliate across that wall. Just spread out thin. There. Now you can see the shadow is around this corner is the sun is casting a shadow around this corner and gives it some depth. So for the planting material here, we can do it a little bit darker. Fill it in a lot more scribble. And that helps give sort of outline to that gate. So now we can give some shape to some of these guys. The pattern in the gate, where the wood is, it's got some openings, and we can see some of that plant material through the openings. How's that look? Okay. There's more plant material here against that farther wall. We can give a hint to, and then we're gonna fill in a few more things. We're gonna do a few more of these details. This gate, the edge of this wall, where it hits the ground. How about the openings in this gate? And this little shrub right behind it. It's not as dark as the other side. Not casting as much shadow. But we're using the plant material to create like a silhouette. So that white little plinth and the edge of the wall here, we don't really see them. They're so white, but we see the things behind it. And that gives those things in the foreground their shape. It's going to be the same as this wall. Everything else is going to give definition to this wall. All right, shall we, why don't we do the sidewalk down here? Let's just give some edges. It's a good opportunity to make just squiggly broken up lines. It's actually just the grass. And now I'm getting near the edge of the drawing. I wouldn't mind drawing in the face of that curb. Can you see it right there? Very skinny line. And I'll do little verticals there to show it's the curb. All right, and there's the bottom of the drawing. All right, we can go back, draw a few more things. We got the stairs to still draw in. That's just a series of straight lines, but I know that it's edge to the stair right there. And then, okay, we haven't ignored the shadows in the arches. Just guess I've saved that for last. And the tree off to the right. Let's go back to our pencil and our subject photo. If you were sketching in front of the building itself, your shadows would have moved on you from when you started it. So that's why it's not a bad idea to save the shadows to last. Where are they? So the sun is coming from this direction. So the shadows that we're seeing here are cast from an object off to the left. So this arched opening is casting this shadow in this area. And this arched opening is casting a shadow somewhere over here. So we can sort of see that line is here. You see this arched opening line is here. Stand corrected. There's that one. What we're getting on this door is a lot of light reflected in the glass. So because these arched openings are all lined up, their shadows should all line up. And there they are. And this one, because this wall is farther in the background, we're not seeing his shadow correctly. All right, so let's start here where it's the most noticeable. Let's clean up our drawing just a little. This shadow line should match your arched opening, but just be down below it. This would have one as well, with the exception that there's a corner of the building. So we're going to get just a little of it. And then this whole area is going to be really dark. See how that works? And then because there's an edge of the building here, we don't see this guy's shadow, but we see this one. And we find him way down here. Let's take a look. I feel like I have this one I have these guys a little low maybe. But that's the good thing about drawing in pencil at this point. And then we see some things back here, but this whole area is going to be mostly in darkness. Okay, where did our doors go? That's one thing that kind of helps you. If you have an object in there, which is the door, how is the shadow hitting it compared to the door? All right. I tend to like to draw my shadows as just a series of diagonal lines. They don't have to be perfectly parallel to each other. And they're kind of fun if they're a little bit of a flick, if you will. Sometimes with shadows, you have to make a plan and just execute it. And after you're done, you can stop and see, oh, it works. I guess what I'm getting at is shadows sometimes can be intimidating because when you're doing them, you think, oh, this doesn't look right. It's one of those times where you need to sort of suspend judgment. I always want you to suspend judgment, but try not to change course halfway through the shadows just because you think it's not reading. Give it a little time, it'll start reading on you. It will start getting better. Now then, this whole area we can do, because see how dark it is, we can go ahead and fill the whole thing in. And you'll want that contrast between where the corner is and that area that's way off in the background. So if you wanted to, and that portion that's in the full shadow, if you want to maybe change the direction of your lines, that would be fine. And then this little guy, he's going to be dark shadows. All right, we started sort of in the middle, worked right. Let's go over here. So this little piece gets that kind of shadow. And then that's farther back, that's hitting a wall that's farther back. So we're going to make that a little darker. Our lines can be a little closer together. Because we can see a few things back here, you could give a few extra lines to help with some of the definition. There is a door. You want to make that door very dark. That's fine. That's actually helps a little. Sometimes it helps to squint, see, so that you can, when you squint, it takes some of the details away and you're just seeing more of the major masses. So the squint test works pretty well. Let's start drawing in this main door. It follows our arched opening almost exactly. Look at your photo and decide how much of the detail you want to add into it. It doesn't need much because the sun is hitting it in such a way that it's really washed out. If you can't get any of that detail in there, good. If not, it's okay. Not too much detail again because we're not seeing much detail. And how about these little doors off to the side? I've been to that building so many times and I, for some reason, always forget that those doors are there. I suppose that's a good thing. They're not meant to be an important part of the composition. They're more functional. And maybe that's the reason I don't notice them is I think they're utility closets. And so every time I've been there, I was there for a meeting. I wasn't going to a utility closet, so I wasn't paying attention. Now, where the shadow is hitting the door, definitely darken it up there. You can do the same here, just where the shadow and the door intersecting. I want to erase some of my pencil lines, but I don't want to do it just yet because I'm going to smear the ink. So let's move on to another part. Let's get up to the roof. So let's do a series of horizontal lines across the roof itself. And I like to sort of break them up like this to suggest it's a series of flat roof tiles up there. When the building was originally built, it was probably wood shingle. But over time, wood shingle wears out, and in Southern California, we've had so many fires that they've started banning wood shingles. I have a feeling right now it's asphalt shingle, which is an economical substitute. Underneath the roof eave, it's very dark, so let's go ahead and do that. This is one of our darkest darks in our drawing. And then while this is all shadow up here, and I would say you could do it with the same sort of cross-hatching we used. You look at the drawing, it's really dark. So if you can do it in the cross-hatching, you can do it in just a series of straight lines. Work around that chimney if you can. And then get over here, and the shadows are a little lighter, so this is where we could do our little horizontals. All right, up until this point, I've totally ignored that tree. But I think the tree helps the composition. It's sort of a nice little fluffy, not fluffy, a nice softening edge. So I'm going back to my pencil and I'm just going to draw a squiggly shape here and decide where are the branches, where are the things that we're going to be drawing. There'll be a couple of areas that are going to be a little darker than others. Okay, so just like we did with the bushes, I tend to just come in with little squiggles, little broken lines. I'm not drawing each leaf. I'm giving a hint that there are branches there. If I'd have thought about it, maybe we would have left some of these areas not shaded in. I didn't think about it. We're drawing the sort of the lights and the darks. There'll be some areas in the shadows down here, shadows here. Okay. Now we probably could take our kneaded eraser if we have it, eraser off the end of your pencil if you don't have a kneaded eraser. Gently start to erase some of your pencil lines. You'll start to see a couple of things. You'll see how this wall really stands out. And that was the idea, is to draw all the things around the wall to give the wall itself its character. There's nothing to the wall. There's a really great quote by Louis Kahn. He designed the Salk Institute. My favorite quote of his is, "The sun never knew how great it was until it struck the side of a building." Even Irving Gill identified shadows as that which gives walls some character. He creates simple buildings, simple shapes. He lets nature soften the edges, give definition, and sun and shadow as well. All right, we're pretty much done. What else do we want to draw on this? Maybe a little more character, maybe a few more plants in the background to help define that back wall, the hedges in the back. A little more tonal value. I actually think our drawing would benefit and give this building more interest and let it stand out a little more if we darken a few of these other things in the foreground. So the contrast between all the darks in the foreground really forces our eye to get over there to that building. So if it's just some lines, you can do some little verticals, almost like hinting at, hey, there's grass down here. I'm putting a few more extra lines in these areas where it's we're leading up. It's the edge of the grass. We're leading up to the entry. And I've kind of ignored this side too. So our sketch has been a series of shapes to help define what's interesting about the building. So it's a composition working together. Two more things I think will complete our sketch. What I always like to do is to draw at the bottom where we are. We're at the La Jolla Women's Club. The date, whatever date you did your sketch. Last but not least, if you have a blue pencil, let's have some fun. Let's draw the sky. This is a black and white drawing, very high contrast, one color. When I draw the sky, there's so many different ways you can do it. Just draw it in. I tend to like to go a little darker near the horizon and lighten up as it gets closer to the top of the drawing. You could also try it the other way. Is darker near the top and lighten near the bottom. You can do your lines diagonally if you want. You could leave some areas with the white showing through as if there were clouds. And maybe there were clouds the day that you were there, so that's your decision. But I'm going to give a few extra lines near the bottom. Kind of helps the horizontal nature of our sketch. The one thing you want to be careful of doing is not to do is try not to outline it. Try not to outline the roof form. I think that's a little distracting. You can add some blue sort of in the tree as if you see the sky through. The other thing that's fun to do with this blue is pick up the reflection. That sky is going to reflect off any glass that's in the building. And that's sort of fun. Really fun because now it gives a little more importance to the door. There, doesn't that add just a whole layer of fun to your fun or interest or charm to your sketch? I think adding that little curb right there might not be a bad idea. Oh gosh, and then I just realized there's something else we forgot. There's some shadows on the steps here. I want to talk about the other shadows in a moment, but let's do the shadows cast by this little plinth. There'll be maybe one line on the lowest one, 2 lines on the second one. See how it goes over? Shows that there's a shadow there. So we've completely ignored the cool pattern that we see in the photo. And there's a reason that we've done that. We don't see the tree that's casting those shadows. And so for a sketch, it would be really confusing. This is a very irregular pattern. And in a sketch, you think, what am I looking at? It's too hard to understand. In a photo, we know, we believe it. It's a photo, must be there. But in a sketch, there's a little bit of realism that is missing. So if it doesn't look right, it just looks like a mistake in your drawing. So we don't want our drawings to look like they've got mistakes. All right. So we've taken a simple building. It's a simple sketch with a lot of visual interest, using a lot of contrast, lights and darks, to give this modern building that's actually 107 years old new life. Now that we've done our sketch folded over like that, we can turn it into a little card and send it to somebody. Give it to your mom. Moms like this kind of thing. If you used just a regular piece of paper, that's good. Nothing is required. But if you've done like I have and you took it out of your sketchbook, you probably want to trim up that edge. It's, no matter how hard I try, I always have trouble getting a really straight line with scissors. But again, this is for your mom. They love that kind of stuff. If you didn't do it on folded over paper, if you just did it on a piece of paper that's, say, like that size, and you want to turn it into a card, you could take thicker paper or some other kind of paper and just take a glue stick, glue the back, tape it down. You'll have a note card for yourself or to give as a gift.